So for those of us who have never been to the White House, so you get invited. Do you get this like a really fancy invitation in the mail, or how do you get invited?
Great question. I almost didn't make it. And I'll tell you why. I got an email and it was like, hey, we're from the White House. Like, we want to invite you and we just need you. And they were asking for like my social security number and stuff like that. And I opened it and I was like, heck no.
It looked like a scam.
Like,
it was like,
this is a scam. If you're really the White House, you know my social security number. Like, bye. Deleted it. Next thing you know, my phone's blowing up. One of the staff members from the White House, they're like, yo, Edgar, ShoBoy. Like, bro, you haven't responded to our email. Like, are you coming to the White House, like, for the Obamas? And I'm like, oh, shoot, that was real? They're like, yeah, that's real. It was literally the most pirated email, like, you know, like those emails you get, like, hey, there's a prince, right?
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My next guest, he epitomizes the American dream, immigrating from Mexico at the age of 5. He now hosts the only bicultural Latino radio show in America. He's the first Mexican-born radio personality to host a top-rated English Top 40 radio show in Los Angeles and New York. His very popular syndicated show can now be heard on 25 stations around the country. He's won the most prestigious award in radio, the Marconi for Personality of the Year. He's also been awarded the Most Influential Leader Award by the United States Senate. And in 2022, he was named the Medalla de Cortez Syndicated National Personality of the Year. Please welcome Edgar ShoBoy Sotelo. Edgar, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, hermano. Really appreciate you inviting me. I absolutely look up to you and everything you've been doing in our industry and continue to do. So super grateful to be here, hanging out with you and your audience.
Likewise, man. We have a lot of friends in common, and I've followed your career now for a long time, and it's just such an incredible story. And so I'm really excited to kind of dive in and learn more about it. Tell me a little bit about growing up in Jalisco, Mexico.
Yeah, so I was in Ocotlan, Jalisco, Mexico for 5 years. And growing up, you know, it's a typical household. I was a surprise in my family. My parents had me when they were 40.
Oh, wow.
My oldest brother is 15 years older than I am. My middle brother's 13 years older than I am. So, you know, my mom thought, I don't know, she had some stomach issues, you know, thought it was the frijoles from the night before. And doctor's like, no, that, you know, you got a baby on the way. And here I am. So it's a blessing, man. So I essentially felt like I grew up with 3 dads, you know, because my older brothers were 15 and 13 years older. So it was like my mom, I would get in trouble and like, wait till your dad gets home and your 2 brothers, you know?
And I'm guessing with that kind of an age difference, they were pretty loving. They weren't the big brothers that beat up on you.
The opposite, bro. They were so strict. I think because my dad was so strict with them, they kind of like passed that on to me. You know, it's like they vented with me. They took it out on me. But yeah, man, a very united family, family of faith. We immigrated over when I was 5 years old to Santa Ana, California, which is out in the OC, but not like the OC you see on TV. It's like the hood in Orange County in Southern California. And yeah, we moved into my uncle and aunt's back room / garage. And that's where we grew up, man. I never realized how poor we were, because you know, at that age when I was 5, I didn't realize it. You know, you have your family, you're all living in one room, but you feel like you have everything you need. We had family love, unity, and faith and hope that if we work hard enough in this country, we could reach, you know, newer heights and new things that maybe one day grow up to buy a home where you could put a car in a garage instead of live in one, right? So,
sure. So when you first moved here, what did your parents do professionally?
Well, you know, it was interesting because they promised me, well, they said we were coming here to meet Mickey Mouse, and that was just to get me to come to the U.S. The only mouse I met was the one in the garage with us, you know? But my dad, he was a photographer. So he started working, taking pictures and videos and so on and so forth at quinceañeras, weddings. And then he worked at a 1-hour photo shop at the time. But I mean, he had every job, right? Initially, construction, agriculture, you name it. But then eventually he got settled into a 1-hour photo shop and doing photography and started his own business. And so that's what I grew up knowing in regards. That was kind of my first glimpse at the arts, and it was my dad, you know, he was also an MC in Mexico. even though I don't remember much about that.
So an artistic family, and I'm assuming a supportive family when it came to supporting you and wanting to be, would you call yourself a performer or an artist, or what do you think of yourself as?
You know, I consider myself as nowadays just content creator, right? But more than anything, I just see myself as a servant leader. And what that means is that I feel God's given me and you certain gifts and abilities, and we got to find ways, how can we use those to serve others? And everything else falls in line and falls in place once you find that purpose and you align yourself with that. So, but to answer your question, no, my family wasn't very supportive in me getting into radio. As I grew up, I was the first one to go to college, got my bachelor's degree in psychology, was thinking about going into politics, and not entertainment, although it's the same thing nowadays, right? And more drama, I think. But, got accepted at George Washington University in DC to get out there and start lobbying and so on and so forth. But then doors started opening up here in LA, putting stickers on cars, working in promotions. And eventually I ended up getting my master's in leadership. And when I told my parents that, I'm going to head down entertainment, they thought it was a joke. Like, wait, what? You got a master's degree. Why are you going to do radio? You're putting stickers on cars out there. I'm like, no, but I'm really good. One-handed, no bubbles, It's really hard.
I mean, that's incredibly impressive. So you got your master's at George Washington University and studied leadership. And then what got you into radio in terms of working for the promotions team and wanting to be involved? What excited you about it?
Yeah. So just to clarify, I got accepted to George Washington University and chose to go get my master's here in Southern California because doors started opening up in radio. So that's the moment. That was basically.
Okay. Did you go to George Washington for a little bit and then came back, or you never ended up going?
I don't know. I went to DC to lobby and to work with a few nonprofits out there. And then I got accepted there and I had to make the choice. Am I going to go into politics or am I going to go down in entertainment? And that's when I decided to stay here. And I went to Azusa Pacific University in Southern California and got my master's in leadership.
We'll get here in a second, but I do want to go on a slight tangent because we're going to talk at a point where you got invited to the White House to meet President Obama, which I can't wait to dive into that. But it sounds like very early on you were interested in politics and being a civil servant. Where did that come from?
That really came from my parents and even my dad. He worked in Mexico. He was part of a union. And he got selected as kind of like the community liaison, looking out for the workers. And he was one of the first people that was able to get them the best possible like mortgages with like low to no interest rates for people that worked at the factory that he worked at in Mexico. So he's always a servant leader in that sense. And then my brother Eddie, who is known in the radio world as Piolín, he's one of the, I would say, 3 pioneers of Spanish morning radio, right?
He's legendary, absolutely.
Yeah. Super, super inspired by him.
I seem to recall, did not President Obama, he actually was on Piolín's show when he was first running for president. He actually came here and was on the show. Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct.
Yes, because it was right up the street from, we're in Glendale, and at the time, Piolín was here in Glendale, and I remember what a big deal it was because they shut down Olibrand Boulevard, and there was helicopters up above. Right. I mean, it's motorcade. It is, if you've never seen the president arrive, or I think he was maybe still running, but at that point he had Secret Service and the whole deal. It is an event like you've never seen before. Right.
Exactly. So one of the pivotal events that really motivated me to get into radio, right? Because I was studying psychology, then leadership. And so I always enjoy people. I always enjoy connecting with people, hearing people, seeing how I can serve. But there was a moment in time while I was in college, and then there was a bill that was targeting Latinos, immigrants in general. It was a very, very discriminatory bill. And I remember my brother started planning a march. And it was so awesome because at that time he led that, and then he connected to other morning shows in LA, both Spanish and English. I mean, I remember at one point him and Ryan Seacrest went on the air simultaneously on 101.9 La Nueva FM, which was my brother's radio station, and then Kiss FM, talking about this march. And that's when it hit me, man. Like, there was close to 1 million people that came out. No incidents, no fights, nothing crazy. And that's when it really hit me like, man, this is the impact you can make through entertainment and especially audio, right?
Sure.
Radio. That intimate conversation that we have the blessing to have with listeners one-on-one, although we're speaking to the masses, but really to a listener is just one-on-one, right? It's the power of you. So that's what inspired me of like, okay, I can use this to serve the purpose that, or to help in the ways that I wanted to help in politics. I can use this platform, right? Not only to bring joy and have fun, but to serve.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's really at that age too, wise beyond your years. And so you decide not to go to George Washington University, and you're like, you've got the radio bug. It's now this instrument that you can fulfill the being able to speak and connect with others, and at the same time use it as a political megaphone for good, effectively.
Yeah, and I would say even less on the political stance, right? Because I think political, especially nowadays, has such a negative context, right? And it's so divisive. Yeah. So it was really more of how can we unite and represent and support our Latino community. And what I started seeing is that there was a Latino community that was just like myself, where we're proud of our roots, whether it be from Mexico, Central America, South America, Puerto Rico, Cuba, DR, Caribe, et cetera, whatever. But I'm saying Latinos in general, where we're proud of our roots, but we grew up assimilating to the U.S.
Sure.
So now we're living in this dual lifestyle, if you will, Latino and also the American culture. We're consuming both Spanish and English content, Spanish, English music, movies, shows, etc. And that's what really interested me is like, I want to speak to the next generation, right? So like my brother spoke, just to give you an example, to the parents. So now we get listeners saying, bro, I remember I used to listen to your brother Piolín because my dad or my mom would drive me to school. They're like, it's a trip. Now I'm driving my kids to school and I'm listening to you.
That's like, really cool.
Does that make sense?
That's
like
really
the next
cool.
Generation.
Yeah. And then you get to give your brother crap for being so old.
Exactly. He's vintage. He's vintage for sure.
So you get your first gig then working at La Nueva on the street team there?
Yeah. So putting stickers on cars. Again, my brother Eddie Piolín did not want me to get in radio. So he actually told the promotions director not to hire me. And so I told the promotions director, don't hire me. I'm just going to start showing up. So I did. I worked for free for about a summer, 2 months or so, just putting stickers on cars, going out there. And I get my brother, right? Like he thought I was getting into it for the wrong reasons of, you think you want to get into this because of fame or concerts or what have you.
Right.
And on top of that, he's like, dude, you're the only one out of our family that went to college and is like, go do something with your life. This industry is crazy. I mean, he told me from the get-go, this industry is crazy. There's ups and downs. It's one of the most, you go year by year, it's volatile. Sure. A lot of things are out of your control. Some things are within your control. Management changes. I mean, we've all experienced it. Anybody that's been in radio, and we're still experiencing it. So I get he was trying to protect me, but I did start putting stickers on cars, and I think he saw me evolve. And then I finally got a 1 hour talk show on an AM station here in LA, 10:20 AM at 10:20 AM. Which was part of Univision at the time on Sunday nights, like at 11 o'clock at night. And I would invite all my friends from college. And it was just a bilingual soup of craziness, man. We really talked about everything and anything. It was really, really dope. And I had a blast. They eventually gave me 2 hours. And
that was your first time really on the air.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly. A big deal, even on Sunday nights. But to have your first show in Los Angeles is a really big deal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was just super grateful.
What did you pitch it as? It's kind of a topical current event political show?
Yeah, no. So I pitched it as a lifestyle, bilingual, bicultural show where we talk about relationships, our life, music, all of it. And, they were 8-minute blocks because it was a talk station. So it wasn't like playing music or anything like that. So
it's tough. I always did music radio, but I've had so much admiration for people that do a full on, talk show. It's a lot of air to have to fill. And
what's wild is that people that do talk shows that do 8-minute segments have so much respect for people that can get a whole point across in 15 seconds in between songs. They're like, how do you do that?
We talk a lot quicker, I guess. So you do that for a little over a year, and then you get hired to do the afternoon drive at Papa La Calle up in San Francisco. And so that's that's a big deal. Obviously, what's San Francisco now? Market 4, Market 5. And now you're doing afternoons, and they're at 100.7 and 105.7. So what was the format, and what was the change from going to a talk show to now a music show, and on Monday through Friday in a prime day part?
Yeah, it was a huge breakthrough for me, and it was interesting because the VP of Univision Radio really believed in what I was doing on that night show, and he's the one that started pitching me to these stations that Univision started popping up left and right, which was La Calle, this new format. Reggaeton was just booming at that time. We're talking about Daddy Yankee, Don Omar, Wisin y Yandel, just the original reggaeton movement of Latin urban. So there wasn't really any Latin urban before that, right? So you see this rhythmic movement happening in the Latin world, and they needed content and so on and so forth. So that's where I fit in. But a lot of radio stations, because they were under Univision, they didn't want to hire me. Later, I find out from PDs that are now friends and so on and so forth. They're like, bro, we were afraid of hiring you. And I was like, why? They're like, you were Piolin's brother. Like, what if it didn't work? We didn't want to be the PD firing Piolin's brother.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
And here I thought, right, or people might think, oh, he's Piolin's brother. That's why he caught so many breaks. And it was the opposite. Nobody wanted to hire me.
It makes so much sense. Yeah. It's, I think, much tougher to be the coach's kid than it is to be another kid on the little league team or the soccer team, whatever it might be, because you've got now a brother, but was a father figure in a lot of ways because of the age difference. And to have the success that he has is just absolutely amazing. And it's someone I want to interview at some point. I may ask you for a favor there. Love to talk to him at one point. But absolutely. I could see where those are gigantic, not shoes to fill, but a big shadow to try to emerge from. And that's it takes a lot of fortitude, man, on your part. Really quick before we get back to, because I want to talk about San Francisco a bit more and that market and what it was like to do afternoons up there. But what did because you've got you said three or two, there's three of you total. So you've got two older brothers. So two of you have gone on to have incredibly successful radio careers. What does your other brother do?
He's super creative, and I'm super proud of him as well. So he started as a dishwasher at a hotel in Anaheim area in Irvine. And long story short, now over 20 years, he's the executive pastry chef for all of Disneyland Resort hotels in Southern California. And I'm super proud of him, award-winning. And I'm just really grateful to have such positive influences and the work ethic that both my mom and my father, rest in peace, left us. And just to know, what drives us, all three of our brothers, is one, our faith, and two, is just to make sure that our parents' sacrifice doesn't go in vain. The immigrant sacrifice, and that's what I'm trying to pass on to my daughters now, who are 6 and 4. And it's a little bit more challenging, right? Like as first, second, third gen continues, and we all come from immigrant backgrounds, unless you're Native American, but it's important to keep those stories alive, And I would ask you, Chachi, do you know who were the first immigrants that brought your family here? And what was their sacrifice,
I'm a Hungarian Jew, and my grandfather brought over my father and my uncle in 1956 during the Hungarian Revolution. He had lost his first wife and daughter in the Holocaust, remarried my grandmother, and then had my uncle and my father. And so my father, not unlike you, he was 9 years old, but came to the United States at 9. And literally they showed up in Cleveland, from Budapest to Cleveland, and that was where they got their start. But that's a whole other story. Love to fill you in on it sometime. But I've got so much.
Thank you for sharing, man.
Yeah.
So you get it. You understand. It's very close. You're first generation. So
yeah, I'm very fortunate, man. We're so incredibly lucky to be where we are and to be given the opportunity. We've all had to work very hard, but we were also afforded a lot of opportunities. And because of the risks and really the guts that your parents had to make that move and to live in a garage, that it takes a tremendous amount of strength, and to give you guys the opportunity and for all three of you to go on and be wildly successful is really a testament to the wonderful parents that you guys had, and certainly the backing and the support, both from I think a mental standpoint and from a financial standpoint to do that. I'm sure.
Thank you.
To be able to pull all that together was not easy. So you're up in San Francisco. You're still wildly young. You're doing afternoons. I mean, you're enjoying life, I take it. Tell me a little bit about. Did you have a moment where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm on the air in San Francisco and I'm living the dream"?
Absolutely. I mean, that was the first time me really living out on my own. I had already moved out here in Southern California, but I was living in my friend's room, renting a room with his family, right, in Burbank. They were like, he allowed me to stay in his kid's room. They had like bunk beds. It was crazy, bro. Like Buzz Lightyear covers. It was wild. But you got to do what you got to do, right? But this was my first time living on my own and getting to a studio apartment in south of San Francisco at a city called Burlingame. And, just showing up with, my car, a sleeping bag, my laptop, and a microwave. Really, I mean, those were the essentials, and I had no TV, nothing else, no sofa or bed yet. But it was just full of hope. And it's like, what do you want to do with this, right? So it was super exciting. 25, having a blast, hosting nightclubs, at a time where, I only had I could go an entire night sleeping without having to get up and go pee. Now I got to pee twice a night. You know what I'm saying? So those were the days, man.
Those were absolutely days.
You slept a whole 8 hours without having to get up and go pee. Don't take that for granted, anybody that still can do that.
So from San Francisco, you now get hired to go do mornings in Dallas. Now, is this all Univision or is this a different ownership? Okay.
That was a different ownership. That was CBS Radio.
Okay.
At the time, which evolved into Entercom and Odyssey and so on and so forth. But yeah, so CBS Radio. When
you're doing afternoons and you're seeing some success now and everything's going well, is your goal to eventually get to mornings? Is that what you were looking to do at that point, or were you still kind of just feeling it out?
Yeah, I really wanted to do mornings because I feel like mornings is where you have that liberty. Although in my afternoon show, it was a music show, but we talked a little bit more than just the intros and outros. We definitely provided content. But I know that in the mornings I could have even more liberty to do more things, if you will. So yeah, Pio Ferro is the one that called me up and gave me that first morning show. Jimmy Gonzalez is one of my mentors as well in radio, godfathers, if you will, also from Univision Radio side. And he now works at CBS Radio, or Odyssey, I should say.
Yeah, and Pio's at Hot 97 in New York.
Pio's at Hot 97 currently in New York. Yeah. So he was in Dallas.
Okay.
Pio, legendary program director, and he was God sent, man. Just how Jimmy was. They're just the type of PD that they're like, we hired you for a reason. Your personality, your talent. What can we do? What barriers can we remove so you can be your full self? And when you find a PD like that, man, you're like, let's go. You go to work and it's a playground every day.
Yeah.
What can we create today? And that's really where I earned my chops, if you will, made my mistakes, learned my lessons, and really grew. And that's when the Marconi came, and
that's amazing. So you had a Marconi before you were like 30 years old?
Yeah.
Jeez, man. You've got to be amongst the youngest, if not the youngest, to have a Marconi. I mean, that's ridiculously impressive.
So. What was that, 2012 or so?
Amazing.
Yeah, roughly. Maybe like 30. Yeah, right around there.
That's absolutely.
I was 25 when I started my full-time job in San Francisco. Did 3 years there, and then 5 years in Dallas.
And then moving from afternoons to mornings. It sounds like it's a phenomenal situation. You've got a great mentor giving you the creative freedom that you need.
Yeah.
Were you at all at any point just stressed out of the magnitude of that and the responsibility that comes with it?
No. I don't think I was ever stressed out about it. I was just, how could I say it? I was just excited, man. And I still am, I really am. I just get up and I get so excited just to connect with people. And the one thing that I did have to, I remember asking my brother, Eddie Piolín, I was like, bro, all right, I'm going to go do mornings. By this time, he's supporting 1,000% what I'm doing. He realizes what's going on.
People are not afraid to hire you now. It's okay.
Exactly. They're like, okay, this guy can do radio. But, I'm like, yo, what's that wisdom, man? I need that wisdom. What's the secret of success? This and that. And I'm thinking he's going to drop some crazy knowledge on me. And he's like, make sure you get some sleep. And I was like, what? No, but for real. He's like, no, like, you were doing nights, you were doing clubs, or afternoons, you were doing clubs. You got to take care of yourself. Get your sleep, take care of yourself, or else you won't be as sharp as you need to be every morning to give everything you are. Take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care of your spirit. And of course, at 28, you're like, sure, whatever, dude. But no, I came to realize real quick, man, that mornings is a different beast. And people say, oh, you're used to waking up at 3 a.m. No, you never get used to that. It's not normal.
100%. You don't. You never get used to it. And that was actually very sage advice at that time. I think sleep over the last, 5, let's say 10 years is made it much more in the media as being really important, and the quality of sleep, mental health, and there's so many different things tied to it. But I remember the same thing back then, man. I would, when I first got started, literally I did nights with Michael Steele. I wouldn't get home until like midnight, do homework. Right. I was maybe in bed by 2, and then I was, out the door again by 7 or 8 for school. Wow. And, I don't think at that point that we really think about how we did it. We just somehow got through it and we did it. But I look back,
you don't think about it. Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. But that was still great advice. I'm a big believer in lots of sleep.
Yeah.
So you're in Dallas for 5 years and enjoying mornings, and now you really feel like this is your day part. You feel at home there, and now New York comes calling, and you go to do English at 92.3 AMP in New York City. What made you decide to make that change?
That was the crossover moment. I mean, how can you say no to New York City? That's really what it came down to be. It was, things were going well in Dallas. There was already conversations about syndication. And, talking to my wife, we didn't have kids at the time. So, we prayed about it. And it's a funny story how it happened. So I win that Marconi. I give a speech. Elvis Duran is the host at that time. I immediately take off, and I don't hear what he says after I spoke, because I immediately took off and like left the stage, and I called my parents to tell them we won. And it's just how grateful I am, blah, blah, blah. And then I get back to the table, and my wife's like, oh my gosh, did you hear what Elvis Duran said? And I said, no, what happened? He's like, oh my gosh, I love this kid, ShoBoy. I think he should host the Marconis next year. Sure thing.
No way.
Sure thing. I get a call from the NAB, and they're like, we want you to host the Marconis.
That is so cool, man.
And so I get to host the Marconis, as the first probably like Spanish speaking radio host, Mexican to do so. And Pio, my PD at that time, and I were like, dude, we're going to prepare like we're hosting the Oscars. Amazing. We did a video sketch. I wrote comedy for it. Every break, I just put everything to it because I wanted to showcase that Spanish radio, Latino radio is not more or less than English, top 40 or quote unquote mainstream radio. You know what I'm saying? It's just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's less than or more than, right? So I really just wanted to showcase that. And what happened is that, all the brass from CBS Radio were there. Dan Mason at the time, Chris Olivero, they were all there, and they saw. And I think that's when they were like, oh, shoot, this guy, he speaks English and he's, funny or whatever. He can communicate really well. And I think that's what sparked the idea about potentially giving me a shot for New York.
Fascinating.
And that's the way it happened. And I didn't think twice about it, man. I mean, let me rephrase that. We definitely prayed about it, but it was more like I have nothing to lose and an amazing experience to gain. So what if it doesn't work out or 2 or 3 years? We got to live in Manhattan, got to do radio from the signal on the Empire State Building and enjoy that. Why not, man? And that's why I'm so grateful to this career. I'm so grateful to radio. Heather Cohen, my agent, who's always been amazing as well, and connected us as well. So anyways, that's how the leap of faith happened there, man.
What an amazing opportunity to go. Well, you start on the air in LA, which is an amazing thing in and of itself, and then you go to San Francisco, you go to Dallas. Now you're in market number 1 doing mornings. Mm-hmm. And I mean, very few people can say that they're on the air in all those markets, but to say that you're just on the air in LA and New York is massive enough. Right. Was there more pressure? Did you feel a greater sense of pressure being on the air in New York versus Dallas or San Francisco?
Yeah, I felt more pressure, right? Because I think people, except for the people that hired me, probably nobody expected us to do anything there, right? Because they're like, dude, who is this guy? You know, he's never done English radio before. And my answer to that was like, but I speak English, guys. Like,
Right.
I grew up here and I connect and I consume the content, et cetera, et cetera. And plus it's New York, right? It's a huge Latino population. But even then, you come across within our own community, right? It's like, oh, well, he's the wrong type of Latino because he's not Puerto Rican or he's not Dominican, right? He's Mexican. But to me, I never saw it that way. I just saw it as I just need to be myself.
Right.
And we are truly a lot more alike than we're not.
Sure.
When we're just sharing our human history, life stories, challenges, comedy, etc. And it was a blessing. We had a great team. Nina, my co-host, DJ Majestic, producer, Kristen, as well as Cardi, our other producer. And we just had so much fun. And I think because maybe not too many people expected much, it took some of that pressure off eventually, right? Like, yo, who cares? Like, nobody expects potentially for us to make it. So let's just go out and do things differently. And I think that's what helped us create so much noise and do well, is that we were not your typical morning show whatsoever. You know, we're really, really different in the approach and the personality and connection to the community.
And you're on the air against, I mean, legends, Elvis, Scott Shannon. Yeah. I mean, that is probably the most formidable city of morning talent. And so just to get on the air there is an incredible accomplishment. So many of those morning shows, my friend Christine does mornings, who's also a client of Heather's, and she's been at, LTW for years. But
she's a legend. Met her, super kind.
Yeah. But I could only imagine the pressure in that market. What a cool story. Did you actually live in the city, or where did you live while you were there?
Yeah, we lived in the city. We lived in the financial district area, and it was a blast, man. I mean, great memories. Our first daughter was born there, Ariela. I mean, I remember she was born December 3rd, so we didn't go out and do anything that New Year's or Christmas. But I just remember this moment, New Year's Eve. That year, the fireworks show was done on our side of our building. We had a view to Brooklyn Bridge and the East River. And that's where the fireworks shows were going on. And, we just turned on Frank Sinatra and just enjoyed it, and then play some,
I love that.
Mexican banda music. So it was a blast, man. Great memories, great people that I met there that I still consider family, and, got to learn a lot, man. And every stage, man, it's just, I learned so much from people around me. You mentioned Scott Shannon was down the hall from me.
That's
and
amazing.
we built a cool friendship there too.
To go from Jalisco and make it all the way to mornings in New York with, and you're still so incredibly young. I could see it, living in the financial district, listening to Frank Sinatra, holding your newborn baby. I mean, that's awesome, man. I absolutely love that story. What a great visual too. So I think I'm a little bit out of order, but you had gone to the White House to meet President Obama, and this is when the United States Senate awarded you the most influential leader award. Is that why you went to the White House?
So those were two separate incidents.
Oh, two.
But yeah.
when you're ShoBoy, it's two separate incidents to have two gigantic awards. Okay, so let's talk about both these massive awards.
Yeah, no, like I said, the reason why I got involved in this is to serve. So I do motivational speaking at schools, colleges, and so on and so forth. And we've had scholarships that we've partnered up with people to give out to the undocumented students and Latino students in general. So, there was a time when they were rolling out Obamacare. This is how I got invited to the White House. And they basically reached out to us from the White House and said, hey, you know what? Dallas Latinos are not signing up for this. The Affordable Care Act, it's really going to help them. And this is beyond, left or right wing. It was something that was really going to give affordable healthcare to my audience.
Sure.
But they didn't trust the system. They didn't understand it. Maybe they're like, I don't get it. You know what I'm saying?
It's complicated.
And I don't trust the system. Yeah. So I said, we need your help. And they're like, we would love for you to interview the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and talk about this. Long story short, we did a campaign with her. We interviewed her. We explained everything that was going on. We went on TV. We did radio, mostly radio though. Next thing you know, they had some of the highest registrations happen in the Metroplex, Dallas Fort Worth area that they had ever seen in any other city. It worked.
When you go to interview someone one of the most high profile people on the planet, are they giving you a list of questions of things that you can and cannot ask? Or could you ask her, or did they give you any sort of agenda? Right. What's the prep look like for that?
Yeah, I mean, they do send you, hey, we want to talk about Affordable Care Act, right? And,
sure.
and why it's important. Here are some highlights, if you will, of how it helps the community. But other than that, it was pretty open to chat however we wanted. And, at that time, our first lady, Michelle Obama, she's still very chill, is very conversational. She catches on. She's fun. She's funny. And so very, relatable, if you will.
Do you have a little anxiety at this point when you're talking to the first lady? Are you just,
absolutely. Yeah. But like positive anxiety, right? Like, sure. Even to this day, man, just speaking on a mic in public, or even I got asked to start doing the announcements at my church, I'm like prepping and like anxious, but it's like positive anxious. It's more like it helps you focus. You feel me? Not like nervous. Like I'm not prepared, but it's more like, all right, getting in the zone.
They said that Kobe or Tiger or Michael Jordan, elite athletes at that moment when they're about to take that shot or swing that club, that their focus increases dramatically and their heart rate actually goes down for whatever reason. They're able to like literally put themselves in a Zen moment and fire that basketball off. It's really fascinating, but I love asking people about that, peak performers such as yourself, because that's incredibly high profile. I don't think it gets much more high profile than that. So you do the interview, the registrations increase dramatically for Obamacare, and pick it up from there.
Yeah. So eventually, the campaign ended, and, obviously millions of people signed up for Affordable Care Act, and they basically invited 100 people out of the entire country to the White House for a cocktail private fiesta party, if you will, with the Obamas. So I was blessed enough to be able to bring my wife.
Oh my gosh.
And so we go to the White House, and, you get to walk in through the different rooms, the library, all of it, man, where the Christmas tree goes up.
So hold on, we got to back up because I've never been to this whole thing is so fascinating to me. So for those of us who have never been to the White House, so you get invited, do you get this like a really fancy invitation in the mail, or how do you get invited?
Great question. I almost didn't make it, and I'll tell you why. I got an email, and it was like, hey, we're from the White House. Like, we want to invite you, and we just need you. And they were asking for like my social security number and stuff like that. And I opened it and I was like, heck no.
It looked like a scam. It was like,
this is a scam. If you're really the White House, my social security number. Like, bye. Deleted it. Lost it, bro. Like, next thing you know, my phone's blowing up. And it's somebody that I had met that had contacted me for the Affordable Care Act and all that. One of the staff members from the White House, they're like, yo, Edgar, ShoBoy. Like, bro, you haven't responded to our email. Like, are you coming to the White House, like, for the Obamas? And I'm like, oh, shoot, that was real? And they're like, yeah, that's real. It was literally the most, we say in Spanish, pirata, like the most pirated email, like, like those emails you get, like, hey, there's a prince, right? You got $1 million waiting for you.
PayPal me $5,000, right?
So that's what happened, man. And then, so I had to get hunted down because I was ghosting the Obamas.
That is hilarious. So you get there now, the day has come of the party, you arrive, and then what happens?
That is just so cool, man, because there's a full circle moment from when I was at Cal Poly Pomona in my undergrad. And in the summer, we would go out and lobby for different educational programs for Latinos. And, I just remember that, man, just going there as a college kid and staying at the whatever Holiday Inn and so on and so forth, and just out there lobbying, and now just having the blessing to be received in the White House. And I think, again, regardless of political ideologies or left or right, it's an honor to be at our nation's capital, especially as an immigrant. And for my wife as well, I wouldn't have accomplished the things that we accomplished if she wasn't by my side and supporting me and picking me up in moments where I didn't think I could make it or I wasn't good enough. There's times where and crossing over to English radio, you would be told by certain people, hey, do you think you're being too Latino on the air? And maybe, you should, chill on that. And it's like, hey, have you ever had that conversation with a white host? Hey, I think you're being too white on the radio. No, we don't mean it like that, and that's not my direct PDs. It's just different people that would chime in here and there. That eventually though, once, results started coming out, they understood that I wasn't trying to be this or that. I was being myself, but it was so different to hear in mainstream radio, if you will, general market radio, that it was odd to them, But anyways, that's a separate topic. Yeah. But I'm grateful for all those moments where my wife was there for me and saying, I believe in you, keep being yourself, do not water yourself down in any way, shape, or form, But anyways, just thinking of that, my wife's parents are immigrants as well. They picked strawberries for 20 years in Watsonville, California. They now own their own businesses and so on and so forth. My parents sacrificed. So it was in a way just pay homage to our parents,
I want to talk about your wife here in a second. Before we get there, you had mentioned that your parents, I think, had passed away because you'd said rest in peace. Were they alive to see you go to the White House?
Yes.
So they got to see that, and they got to see your brother interview at the time, the future president of the United States. I mean, that's got to be absolutely surreal for them.
Yeah, it really is. And they were super proud of my brother Eddie and George, executive chef, and myself. I think they were our biggest cheerleaders. I think that's what I missed the most is, they were still my first phone call. They're our biggest supporters and cheerleaders, man. So, I'm just super grateful that they got to see a lot. I mean, they got to come to New York. I got to host and open up for Fluffy in Madison Square Garden.
No way.
And Gabriel Iglesias. Gabriel gave me the amazing opportunity. Funny story. He tweets me at ShoBoy. He's like, at ShoBoy Show. He's like, hey man, I want you to MC and present me at Madison Square Garden. And I look at it because it's literally on the 1st of April that he tweeted it. I'm like, dude, this is an April Fool's joke. I was like, ha, like laughing emojis, right? And eventually he like calls me and he's like, yo, bro, like, no, for real. Like, can you? And I'm like, oh shoot, bro. I was like, again, a White House moment. Is this real? I was like, you literally tweeted on the 1st of April. I thought it was April Fool's. So I got to bring my parents from LA and fly them in.
Oh, amazing. So they got to actually, see their son literally on stage at Madison Square Garden. Yeah. Incredible. So where did you meet your wife?
Just super grateful. I met her in the Bay in San Francisco. She was going to college out there studying at the Fashion Institute, FITM.
And my cousin went to FITM in San Francisco.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's so cool. So you guys met, and then did she know what she was signing up for in terms of this crazy radio career and zigzagging across the United States?
I tried to scare her as much as I could. I really did. I mean, I tried to scare her away many times, and she just kept saying, it's all good. It's all good. We're in this for the long run. I get it. It doesn't matter where we live, if we live in an apartment, in a back room, in a great house or what have you, whatever's best for us and our family, I'm there for you. And that's a huge blessing, man.
That it is.
She's helped us in our current business and, now being, and we'll get to that, but, independently owning our radio show and so on and so forth. But
a podcast.
Huge support. And for those of you that know that, it's not easy being married to somebody in entertainment period, but radio especially because we move so much,
For sure.
And there's so much instability and ups and downs.
Without a doubt, it's a transient business, but you've gotten to go to some amazing markets. Let's put it that way.
But you can look at it that way too, right?
Yeah.
Like we got to live in these amazing cities, meet amazing friends, and call people family now that are friends that start off as friends and now they're family. And we have family in Dallas, we have family in New York. Yeah. I
don't see Fargo on this list, so it could have been a lot worse, right?
Hopefully, we get picked up there too. Though I'm down.
So you come back to LA. You come full circle to where you got your radio career start. Now you're at 91.7 here in 2018. Tell me a little bit about that move.
Yeah. So at that moment in time, Carson Daly was retiring from AMP in LA. The whole purchase was going on between CBS Radio and Entercom at the time. There's just so much change, but I do get the blessing thanks to Chris Abbott, Chris Oliveira at the time to come out here to LA and be part of the show. But at that time, it wasn't, my show or the ShoBoy show per se. They put us together with Brian Moot, who's super talented.
Yeah, really talented.
Chelsea Briggs as well. Super awesome, awesome talent as well. And just DJ Majestic and Tamara with social media. At one point, Brad Nolan worked with us as a producer as well. So we had a lot of fun for the 2 years that we're here in LA at AMP Radio. That was fun, man. Just doing radio back in my hometown.
I bet.
That was a blast.
And now you go from
cool.
being up against Elvis and Scott Shannon and Christine and all these legends in New York. Yeah. Now you're up against Seacrest and you're up against, back at the time, I guess Kevin and Bean are still around at that time. I mean, there's some.
Yeah, they were our neighbors.
Yeah. Our neighbors. I mean, there's.
I grew up listening to Big Boy,
Sure, Big Boy.
He's somebody that I believe shaped who I am in radio today, along with my brother and all kinds of legends, Rick Dees and so on and so forth. So it was a surreal moment. I think for anybody that has the opportunity to do radio in their hometown, it's definitely special.
Yeah, and especially when their hometown's market number 2. So now you've been on the air. You've done. I mean, think about that for a second. You've gone San Francisco. You're really only missing Chicago, and I think you've got the top 5.
Yeah, Houston. Yeah. We're on in Houston now, though, with our syndicated show, but we still need to get Chicago. I think we would have a lot of fun in Chicago. Yeah. So Chicago's very similar to LA.
LA, New York, where did you enjoy being on the air more? Where did you feel like you had, I don't know if there's more excitement, more impact?
Yeah, I enjoyed both for different reasons. I think I probably felt more freedom in New York just because it's your show per se. You have 100% responsibility of doing what you believe is best and making things happen. But being home, I'm so grateful for that opportunity, man. I got to come back home after being out 10 years to enjoy my parents. At that time, my mom already had a terminal illness at that time.
Sorry to hear that, man.
And doctors, thank you, brother. And doctors had only given her, a year and a half to 2 years of life. And thank God she lived another 5 years. So I got to enjoy her. My dad also eventually got stage 4 cancer, and I got to enjoy him. So I am so grateful that AMP Radio in LA gave me that opportunity to come home because I didn't have to pay for that move from New York to LA.
And you worked for some really high profile PO you mentioned in New York. At the time when you were at AMP, was that Weatherly that was the program director or Chris? I mean.
So in New York, it was Rick Thomas.
I'm sorry, it was Rick Thomas. Right.
Loved working for Rick, man. Talk about a guy. Funny story. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing this, but I will.
No, share it.
So Rick Thomas actually got put in jail for me.
What?
My PD in New York.
Are you serious?
This is how gangster he is. He's so Italian, so mobster. Anybody that knows Rick, he is a ride or die for his talent. And that's what I love about him, man. And he just allowed us to be free and just encouraged us. And he had our backs. And you just love PDs. Again, I've been blessed with such great PDs.
How did he end up in jail for you?
So we started a campaign when we first launched, which was #FindShoBoy.
Okay.
And there were stickers of just my face. It was like, nobody knows me. They have no idea what this face is, and it wasn't even Halloween, so it's just like a silhouette of my face, like black and white. And they're just stickers, #FindShoBoy, so that people would be like, go to social media.
Okay.
And it would send it back to our social media and then let them know that we were the new show on AMP Radio.
Got it.
So Rick is going crazy and he's putting stickers up in the subway. New York City gets caught for vandalism.
It is amazing. I didn't know the story.
Gets thrown in jail.
Whoa.
Has to call our GM. And literally had to get him out of jail. It was wild, man. And we couldn't believe this story.
That is incredible. I have a whole new respect for Rick Thomas. I had no idea. So he's like full on. I mean, that's like amongst the ranks of Basquiat and Keith Haring. Those are all subway artists that got arrested. That's incredible. That's
Rick
incredible.
Thomas is a legend. I absolutely love him. And he has an amazing wife as well, Teresa. And they were just, they brought us in. I remember when we first moved to New York, they gave us an Italian welcome. They brought over, bread and all kinds of herbs and spices. And it's just so special, man. It's just, you're just grateful for
So
the
cool.
really, really good people. And they're, you know, just how there are some negative forces in our industry, there are some amazing people that we gotta celebrate more, man. We just gotta give them, pay them the roses, give them the roses, if you will, and just show them love.
You got a great attitude about it, man. You're absolutely right. Sometimes I think this industry, we have a tendency to beat ourselves down, but there are on the counterbalance to that are the incredible people, such as the mentors that you've mentioned, and the support system along the way that gave you these amazing opportunities. That's really well put. So in 2020, just 3 years ago, you decided to go out on your own and basically launch your own syndicated show. Tell me about that, and that takes guts in and of itself. But how did that all come to be?
Yeah, I think I don't want to skip over this part because I believe a lot of us have gone through this, right? So I was unemployed for 6 months until I started my own project. And it was obviously during the whole pandemic and nobody was hiring, and I was speaking with a few people, but everything got frozen and it was just craziness, right? And it was the first time I had ever seen myself unemployed, without a job. And that's a shocker, man. You coming home to tell your wife. And at this time, I have 2 daughters now. My second daughter was born here in Southern California, Alani. And to come home with that news and just not knowing, hey, I'm not sure how, I'm going to be able to provide, or we're going to be able to provide. But again, to have that support from my wife and say, don't worry, we got to remember God is our provider, nothing else. I believe in you. And it was a blessing in disguise, man. And although there was so much craziness at that time, in that LA building, I'm still very thankful for that chapter of my life, because again, if it weren't for the people and the leadership in LA, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to come home.
Sure.
So I'm always grateful, man, even though it was probably one of the most challenging runs of my career, to be honest with you.
I mean, that was a high pressure situation in both cities, because you were the CHR station that was taking on the incumbent. You had Z100 in New York and you had Kiss FM in LA. And that is incredibly challenging, and legendary morning shows. You were going up against Elvis in New York and going up against, Ryan Seacrest here. So to go and try to do that is so incredibly commendable. And I know that situation was both those situations were a pressure cooker situation, but to come out of it, and I'm sure you learned such a tremendous amount. And to your point about being able to come back here and spend those years with your mother and your father, that's,
those 6 months that I was unemployed, during the pandemic, those were the last 6 months in my father's life. And so I got to hang out with him, got to go to Dodgers game with him, to the World Series, and just had a great time with him, man, and my mom as well. So my dad passed away first in 2020, and then my mom just last year, 2022, October. It was just her 1 year anniversary. So I'm just grateful at that, man. And I think a lot of it is just perspective, right? Even if you're in a sea of issues and drama and doubt and fear, if you could just hold on to one blessing in your life, at least hold on to one positive thing, that'll kind of keep you afloat while the waters die down, But thanks to me being in the Bay, me having worked in Dallas and New York and here in LA, my wife, my dad, my brothers were just like, hey man, why not launch your own show? You're ready. You've had success in all these different cities, or were able to have moments of success and did well. You know how to get to the audience in the East Coast, South, Center, all of it. Just launch it. And again, it goes back to that need that I've always had in my heart of, I want to speak to that next generation Latino, English dominant Latino, but that is truly bilingual and bicultural. And that's when I launched this version of my show, lifestyle show, the same ShoBoy show. Take that leap of faith. We grabbed our life savings and said, we're just going to go for it, man. And in the middle of a pandemic, it had just started. It was August 2020. So there's no advertising at that time. We all remember that, man. Entravision and another great PD, Pato, with Entravision, who said, I believe in you. Let's partner up. We'll do your sales. You do your content. We'll give you the studios to work out of. But here are your logs. No commercials, man.
Wow.
And I was like, hey, you know what? nobody was listening to radio at that time, as much because, people weren't in the radios, were locked down. I was like, this is a perfect time to start this, get it worked out. And we started in 3 cities and now I'm grateful to be in 25 cities, including Houston, DC, San Diego, Sacramento, Vegas, etc. So
the entrepreneurial spirit of yours is so impressive. It takes a tremendous amount of guts to go out and start your own business, and that is tough. There are all sorts of things get thrown at you that you would never expect. It's just working at a company, and not that you work in pressure situations that we just talked about, but there are just other things that come with running a business and taking your life savings and rolling the dice and having kids. Do you think that part of that spirit comes from what the chance and the risk that your parents took on immigrating here? Is that part of, do you think your inner strength comes from what they taught you?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. That leap of faith and believing in themselves. And, for those of us that are immigrants or have immigrant parents or grandparents and hearing the stories, it's just wild, man. It's like, imagine planning yourself and all of a sudden putting yourself in the middle of China and saying, figure it out, right? Right. Not knowing the language, not knowing anything, but just making it work, right? Just for an example, right? So yeah, and it's like, I have what it takes. I know what I got to do in the sense of the radio side. I just had to learn the entrepreneur side. But yeah, just taking that leap of faith. And really at that time, when there's no seat for you at the table because of the pandemic, what do? You go and build your own table.
And I love that. I don't know. I think though a lot of people wouldn't have necessarily the chutzpah to go and do that you have. And so I love what you just said. And that's what I would do as well. That's what I did. But the fact that you go and you did that, I think a lot of people just still kind of be like, oh, woe's me. And do what they do. And I don't mean to be, down on anyone, but I just, I point that out because I'm very impressed by it. Commentary / question for you. If we go back really quickly at both of the, CBS in New York and then here in LA, this is my commentary. I think you're a very humble person. I think you're an incredibly talented person. I think that the music cycle is what ended up unfortunately hurting both of those stations. I feel like there just was not enough CHR product at that time. So regardless of who you put into those stations, it was going to have a challenge struggling, because even if you look at the numbers today, and this is no disrespect to Beata or anyone that's programming KISS or who's programming Z, it's challenging. There's not a ton of great CHR. It's a little bit better now, but when you look at some of those artists, Taylor Swift, for the monstrous act that she is, virtually every format has Taylor Swift records. It's hard to find records that you can really own and succeed with in this environment. Do you agree with that, or or do you think I'm crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think we're seeing the reality, right? I mean, AMP LA is simulcasting KNX, the news station, right, on FM. And I believe New York did the same thing. After AMP New York, they tried rock, alt. And now I believe they're also,
I think you're right.
Now they're doing the news station FM, I believe. But I know alt is not there anymore. But anyways, to your point, look, when you have so many radio stations kind of leaking over, right? So you have KISS, and then the Real also, and Power.
And so that happened when you guys were there.
Crossed over.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a huge.
And then you still have My FM, right? Yeah. I love and admire Valentine so much. What a great talent. But you have these heritage stations, and then it's just like there's not enough room for both, right? And we've seen that. So now there's only one CHR station, or true CHR, if you will, here in LA and also New York. And those are the biggest markets, man.
It's wild.
Because that's all there's space for. And I haven't checked lately, but if you're mentioning that the CHR stations, aren't doing as well as they used to, even in LA or New York, then I could see why. Music cycles. Yeah, for sure.
I think I personally think it's music cycle, but what an interesting situation in both those markets, and the fact that you were in the thick of it. So incredibly exciting.
Yeah. And that's a lot of stuff is beyond your control, right? Totally. But you got to own up what's within your control. But most importantly, just be grateful for the lessons and the good times that I've had in every city and every experience I've had. And I'm so grateful to every PD, every GM, and every team member and coworker that I've had, man. It's been now kind of tracing back through this journey, which we don't do a lot of, right? You don't sit there and think through everything you've been through. So thank you for this opportunity. It brings a smile to my face of just filled with gratitude, man. Really, really. I was like, wow, man, it's been cool.
Talking just about, again, back to entrepreneurial and this whole journey of yours, and to kind of explain, in case I know we have some people that listen there on the local side, and the network side's slightly different than the local side. It takes a lot of guts to self-syndicate, because the first few markets, while it's a gigantically big deal to get cleared in these various markets, and you're obviously incredibly grateful to the program directors that put you on, the revenue that you generate from the commercials, especially during the pandemic, is much less than you would think. And so I'm guessing the first few affiliates that you had, you were not making a whole lot of money, and you are probably losing money for quite some time until you can get to enough stations where then it starts to scale and you can start to, probably live again. Cause I'm sure you were doing well, doing mornings in New York and doing,
Exactly.
mornings in LA and so forth. So,
yeah, that stable or a consistent paycheck.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your wife, Janet. Is she concerned at all during this time going, what the hell are you doing? Or did she, kind of believe with you the entire way?
No, she was the first one to believe. She was the first one to say, we got to do this, because, in that transition, in the pandemic, just being completely transparent, there are times where you're just like, I'm done with radio, man. Like, that's it. I mean, again, I'm very grateful for each chapter, but there are parts of our industry that beat you up.
Yeah.
That are unfair sometimes, and just stuff that happens that, I'd rather not speak about, just because, there's no need. I'd rather focus on the positive. But there's that time where you say, you know what? I had a great run. It was amazing. We got to do San Francisco, Dallas, New York, LA. I'm good. Let me move on to the next stage or chapter of my life, right? But then you got to ask yourself, why is it that you're doing that? Is it because truly you have nothing else to give? Or because you're giving up?
Yeah.
Like, what's the motivation behind that decision? And, and so there was that moment where I was in that funk, but then I decided to do this, and my wife believed in me, and my family believed in me every step of the way. And I'm super grateful for our team on the ShoBoy show. Eddie, my nephew, who's my right hand producer, Vanessa, who's our co-host, Kim, who does our social media, Becca, who started with us. But, Bato, everybody at Entravision, Jeff Lieberman for believing in this project. I mean, they're just like, okay. And I remember I was excited. I think we got to 5 markets, and, I was like, all right, so now we're going to start making some real money, right? And they're like, you're actually technically not really a network yet. And I'm just like, wait, what? They're like, yeah,
You've got a podcast, Hanging with Los Sotelos. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So that's something that started in the pandemic, right? With my wife, we would put the girls to sleep, and, with everything going on with being unemployed, my mom's terminal illness, my dad having stage 4 cancer. There was times where we would just go into our closet and pray and cry and just talk. And then we just said, hey, you know what? Why don't we start recording these and just be as vulnerable and honest and as real as possible with people that want to hear something like this? That, let's be honest, our life isn't always what we see on Instagram, right? We all have challenges right now. You all have, you probably have something you're worried about right now, or a doubt or fear about. So it's good to hear other people sharing their challenges and being vulnerable about it, because it makes you feel like you're not alone. And when you feel like you're not alone and you hear other people make it out of those stages, it gives you hope. So that's really what Hanging with Los Sotelos is about. It's my wife and I hanging out, talking about our life experiences as parents, as partners, right? As husband and wife, as people of faith. And that's where we just encourage people, man, and really try to give people hope and just to say, like, tough it out. I truly believe that at the center of a lot of our issues that we have in our society today is because there aren't healthy enough couples and parents, and all that trickles down to our children, impacts them, creating a lot of the things that are going on in our society, right? There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. So if you and I do a better job of being better husbands, better fathers, better brothers, that's what we can do to be able to help our society out the most, you know? So that's really our purpose and our mission, if you will, is just to help people give hope and unite families, just how my parents immigrated to keep our family united because my brothers had immigrated before they did. So that was really the purpose behind my dad's, is we can't be separated like this. Like, we got to be together.
I love that mission, man. It's inspirational, really, listening to you speak and hearing your attitude and the things that you've accomplished at still such a young age, whether it's winning awards from the U.S. Senate or interviewing Michelle Obama about Obamacare or getting invited to the White House, these legendary radio stations you worked at. I mean, what an impressive career. And you could talk to someone that's in their 70s and say that's an impressive career, yet you're 30 plus years, younger than that. It's just absolutely amazing. You've accomplished so much, including being the father of two girls. I think 6 and 4. You said a little bit earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
What's it like to be a girl dad?
Oh man, right now it's a lot of fun. I hear it gets a little bit tougher later, but
yeah, I've heard the same.
Right now I am enjoying it so much. I'm fascinated by them. I want to set the bar for them as to how I treat my wife, how I treat them. I want that to be the absolute bar, the minimum of how their future partner is going to treat them, their future husband. And it's a blast, man. It's so much fun. At the age right now, they're having little conversations now. Their personality's out. Ariela's playing soccer and she's crushing it. And I'm just, you get that sense of pride in your kids now, and now I'm getting the sense of what's driven them and what drove them, to keep going here in the United States as immigrants is seeing their sons have little wins here and there. It's awesome. And even if it's a little award from school that they come home with, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm that parent that's crying at parent teacher conference, when they tell me like, hey, your daughter's doing good academically, but she's just such a kind human being. She really looks out after everybody. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great.
I love that you are so in touch with your emotions, man. That's fantastic. A lot of, probably including myself, I wish I was a little bit more, maybe I need some psychological care, a little bit more in touch with my feelings and can converse about them like that. It's very impressive and something, honestly, I look up to. I'm going to give you a bonus question. This has been so incredibly cool. What do you want to be remembered for?
I just want to be remembered for somebody that served God, his family, and others. I think that's it, man. I think it's that simple. I just want to be remembered for that. Like, hey, you know what? Edgar, ShoBoy, he always seek to serve and to bring joy and hope to people. I think if I can be remembered for that, then it was a life worth living,
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer, Darren Silva. Producer and editor, Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator, Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution, Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.